So hello and welcome to another episode of Rustacean Station. I am co-hosting today with Zishan. Zishan, hello, welcome.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Hi, Alan. Happy New Year.
It's been a while since we caught up.
Yes, it's been a while.
Well, I think 1 month ago, 2 months ago, I was in Berlin.
Oh, yeah. We met here in Berlin. It was cool to hang out. We had lunch together.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So it's good to finally meet you. But our time together isn't the focus of the show, but it's still good to have you back on again.
Thanks.
We have, is it pronounced Marcin? I forgot to ask how to say it correctly.
Marcin.
Marcin. Yeah, and you're the creator of, and again, this one I want you to tell me because I've heard so many different ways to pronounce your project. How do you pronounce it?
Asciinema. That's kind of one of them. And the one I stick to, really, because it's a made-up word. And it's kind of tongue breaker.
Well, because like when you read words, you don't really read the whole thing. You kind of read the ending, read the beginning, and kind of blend it together. So I always read it as Asciinema, which obviously is not because, there's something missing. I'm sure you heard that before.
Exactly, people do that. That's the easiest.
Also, was it Asciinema? I think was another one you've heard people say.
This happens, which is, it's just fun.
People won't forget that name. But I don't know, how to even describe what it is because I've seen it before and I was like, okay, this is an interesting project. And I didn't focus on what it was. I just thought, okay, this is really cool. You get code into here or you get terminal or something because I wasn't paying attention to exactly what was going on. I was just watching, I think it was Elixir had some videos that they're using Asciinema or Asciinema now. Using your project, let's say like that.
Right.
So I don't say it wrong again. And I thought this is interesting. This is kind of cool. This is really like a nice looking video because it looks like a video player, but it's not, right? So how would you describe this project?
Asciinema is a suite of tools for recording, replaying, and sharing terminal sessions. There are three main sub-projects. One is the command line program, which you actually use to record the terminal, which is called just Asciinema. You run it in your terminal and you can record any activity you do there. It produces small, lightweight recording files in ASCII-cast format. So this is the first component. The second one is the web player written in JavaScript. So that's a player available as a library you can use on your own website, which looks like a regular web video player, but it's built from scratch with HTML, JS, and Rust. And the third main component is a server, which is a hosting platform for all the terminal recordings people produce and share. The site asciinema.org is the primary Asciinema server instance, but since all those things are open source, you can as well self-host the Asciinema server and not upload your recordings to some random guy's server, but keep it all with you.
As we mentioned before the show, I listened to the changelog podcast you did. It gave me a lot of understanding, about the project. I mean, you've engineered it in a way that has made it both interesting and also low cost, right? Yeah, I heard you say that your S3 bill is like $3 a month?
Yes. The bill for the site is that low because the AWS bill is just for S3. The compute is provided by project sponsor Brightbox. It's a UK cloud provider. They've been sponsoring the server side for I think a decade now, since pretty much the beginning. There was this public asciinema.org instance running there. So the recordings are stored on S3, and because they are, compared to regular video files, they are very small, they're tiny. This is really not a big cost. Of course, I do some caching, local caching on the instances themselves. There's some local file system cache. Yeah, so the recordings are usually served from the local cache. So it's not like I'm not paying for egress from S3 a lot. It used to be more, but once I implemented caching, I just put Nginx with some caching directives in front of the web server, and that's how it is. But still, it's like nothing. It's even less than a coffee, right?
Yeah, which is great because you're not able to kind of make ends meet. Life is not cheap, right?
Right.
And hosting costs can be out of this world for some things.
Yes, exactly.
So the fact that you have it so cheap is like insane, right? You don't really think too much about running the project, I think.
Yeah, of course. If this was just like some regular video hosting platform, I just couldn't run it just out of my pocket, just for free for everyone. Because the Asciinema.org server is out there and available for anyone for free, basically. So, of course, I welcome donations, but I just wanted to create a nice community hub for cool recordings.
Cool. And is there like a lot of traffic there?
I checked the server logs, and there's roughly 300,000 page views a day. That's approximation because a server allows people to embed the recordings on their own site, and which serves iframe embedded player, right? So, and this gets served from my server. So like if someone embeds the recording on some popular blog, then this will all count towards this request count. So, but yeah, it's not low, but it's not huge. But I think for a niche thing like this, it's quite cool. And it's thanks to Elixir. In this particular case, not Rust, but Elixir, this web server is just like doing very, very well, just pretty much always in lower CPU percentage. But yeah, the project in general has been like a playground for me as well, because I just love doing all sorts of stuff, hacking on things and learning new languages, new technologies. So you mentioned that it's interesting, combination of things, and for me it's been always like a nice place to look for things to optimize and at the same time learn new things. During this time, since the project was started in 2011 or 12, thanks to it, I've learned a lot of languages, a lot of technologies, and I've learned which of them are good for some things for this project or for specific components, and which are really not that good. So right now, for example, the Asciinema CLI, the thing which you use for recording, I'm writing it in Rust. It's been the last released version was built with Python, as it has been for the majority of the project's lifetime. There was a quick detour through Golang, like 8 years ago. That was right before 1.0 of the recorder. I was using Go commercially for client work, and then I thought, well, Go seems to be a nice fit for this type of command line program, but it didn't work out like that well. The Go version lasted for about a year and a half, and I kind of got tired of this code base and learned some things about Go which I still don't like. Back then, Go had a kind of terrible package management story. I know that these days it's much improved. Also, there was a lot of boilerplate. So at some point I thought, no, like I would rather go back to Python and not worry about all the things that drive me nuts in Go. So I just recovered the old Python branch and backported some new things that were added to the Go version, and then released another new version in Python. But then fast forward a few years until now, I'm writing it in Rust, and there are several good reasons for doing that.
If you could hold that thought, I think one thing we missed out completely was your introduction. Let's go back to that, and can we first get an introduction about you, basic stuff that you are happy to share with the world.
Yeah, who are you? Why are you here? That existential question we all ask ourselves.
Okay. I'm a software engineer by trade. Currently, I work as an independent consultant, working with startups, bigger companies, mostly using Elixir and Rust. I'm based in Poland. I've lived there most of my life. I spent some time in Norway, 5 years in Norway. It was a great experience, but now I'm back in Poland. I learned programming on Commodore Amiga 600 computer in the 90s using Amos programming language. It was like a flavor of Basic. And since then, I've used so many languages that I don't really even count.
Starting this project, the steps you went through is quite a lot, right? Because you were kind of almost yak shaving to a certain extent because you built your own player, even from the beginning. I mean, now we're going to get to the current player, which is definitely a huge achievement. But the beginning one was really super hack, right? Like you're even using jQuery, which is kind of a little bit of a hack itself, I think, just to kind of work across all the different prompters. Do you mind to kind of start from the beginning? Like what brought this idea to your mind? What was the catalyst? How did you get started? And then kind of work us up to where you are today, if you don't mind.
Sure. I was playing with the Unix command called script in my terminal, which is a small utility that allows you to create a recording file from your session. And it's a tool that was created, I think, in the 90s or maybe even earlier, which produces a single file that you can replay in your terminal with a related command called script replay. And back then, it worked on Linux, and the ability to replay actually in your terminal only worked on Linux systems. And there is a script command on macOS and FreeBSD systems, but back then, 10 years ago, the versions shipped with those systems didn't have ability to replay, so it was kind of like pointless there. But I wanted to build something. It was just a fun project. Like it was like, can I make a video player of those sessions in a web browser? So it was just like a experimentation phase back then, and I learned that using a really small amount of Python code, you can implement something like that. So I did that, and it worked on Linux and macOS and FreeBSD and all of the systems. So there was one part of like getting there. And then I was like, okay, how do I implement the player in the browser? So I just created a div element on a page and dynamically using JavaScript added span elements representing lines, and those were animated in real time with the JavaScript code. And back then there was no like React or other easy to use in a declarative way libraries in JavaScript. So I just used jQuery to like look up this third row and update some characters where the update is needed. So it was kind of prototype, quality, but it worked. It was really fun to see some like movement and colors. Back then, there was no functionality like fast forward, rewind, clicking on the progress bar to seek to a place you want to see. It was just like pause and resume. So that was the beginning. And then later, once the project got more popular, there were more feature requests, I had more ideas. And so I wrote this player in ClojureScript. Clojure is one of my favorite functional languages until this day. And you can compile Clojure code to JavaScript. And so I thought, okay, I will rewrite the player from scratch in ClojureScript. And I will create a proper terminal emulator for it to provide the correctness to the emulation part. So because every terminal that we use has a state machine and some internal representation of the buffer, changing colors and moving cursor, these are all controlled through control sequences. And for this to be reliable, you need to have a proper state machine. And I decided, okay, I'll do that in Clojure, and I did. And so it worked well. It fixed lots of display bugs, like emulation bugs. It worked well for many years. But when it comes to performance, especially for like highly dynamic recordings, well, people were doing really funny things like recording YouTube video piped into like rendered with a Kaka library, which turns, video into ASCII, colored ASCII. So people were just playing YouTube videos in the terminal and recording that. And the performance of the playback was terrible. So I thought, okay, well, this is an edge case, but challenge accepted.
You mentioned Kaka library, and it's funny to me because I wrote the GStreamer plugin for that, so that you can use it in GStreamer Pub. And it's still there out there with my name on it.
Oh, nice.
And back then, I didn't even know what caca actually means. I didn't know any European language other than English. And everyone would
Yeah.
laugh at me when I mention it. And then at some
Right.
point, I realized, okay,
What it
that's
is.
why they're
Okay.
laughing. Sorry, it's just it was too funny not to mention.
Is it KAKA? What is actually the name of that one?
CACA.
CACA. Okay.
It's more like lip caca, and it's quite old. It was I wrote the plugin in 2007 or something, or six. No, wait, 2005 maybe. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you, Mark.
Yes, so I thought, okay, let me see what I can do about the performance. And I was optimizing the heck out of the ClojureScript implementation, but there's so much you can do there. And because the Clojure uses immutable data structures, nothing is mutable there. It allocates and deallocates memory all the time. And if you do some like a very intensive work over screen buffer and interpreting data, then you're producing a lot of garbage, which forces garbage collector to run all the time, and it was just choppy there. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll find another way. And then I thought, okay, let me experiment with Rust, because I can compile that to WebAssembly, and then I will have near native performance, and we'll see. So I first started with prototyping what's now called AVT, Asciinema Virtual Terminal, which is just the terminal emulation part used by Asciinema project. And this was like 6 years ago, I think. And it was my probably first major Rust code base, other than, some small scripts and just playing with Rust. So I built that, and then I thought, okay, I will use that inside the ClojureScript player. But it was not that easy, the tooling to embed it. And so I decided to rebuild the player in JavaScript, use solid.js for rendering, and embed the Rust AVT library for emulation and virtual buffer management. And it was super easy to embed it using the Rust WASM pack. It was mostly painless, I think. And it resulted in two nice things. One is that I measured the throughput the web player could handle of the stream of data to interpret and render. So I measured that, and the new implementation using Rust compiled to WebAssembly was 50 times faster. So that was something like, well, okay, there's something wrong with this. Maybe I'm benchmarking this wrong. But then I approached the benchmarking in from various angles. The problem with the ClojureScript implementation was that it was just not the right fit for like high performance project like that. Mostly because of the immutable data structures. Clojure has ability to use some special mutable constructs, and I played with that, but it really didn't help a lot. So Rust just like blew me away here. And another nice thing was that the WebAssembly blob, the compiled artifact, is embedded in the JavaScript library as a base 64 encoded data array, just for ease of distribution. So if someone wants to use it as just a standalone JS file, they don't need to carry together with an additional .wasm file. So it's also embedded, but compared to the previous Clojure implementation, it's 4 times smaller file size. So that was yet another nice thing about it.
So was this the time when you first time experienced Rust? Like this was when you learned Rust as well, or did you learn it already at some point?
So Rust was on my radar for a long time, but I didn't have a good use case for it to build something substantial. And this performance thing in the web player was like, okay, maybe this is the problem for Rust. So that's when I learned Rust like properly. Started 6 years ago implementing that terminal emulator there. I can say that the first major thing I implemented in Rust was the terminal emulator. And now the AVT, this thing that was supposed to just solve the web player's performance problem, is used in a few other places. So for example, on the server side, it's embedded in the Elixir application using Rustler library, which allows bridging, like using Rust code as a native extensions in Elixir and Erlang. And there it's used for generating thumbnails. So when you upload recordings to asciinema.org, you see those small like previews on the index pages. And this is where AVT Rust library is used for. It's basically feeding the recording up to a certain point, like let's say halfway through, or to a point configured by a user, and just builds the screen content and then takes a snapshot of it. So that's one thing. Another is just more like something I'm working on right now, recording analysis, because I would like to extract more like information about the recordings, various aspects from them, and I can also use AVT for it. And because it's there in the Elixir app, I will be able to easily do that and save those analysis results in a database and maybe use them for example, more advanced search on the website. Or any search. Right now there's no search, so there will be. Another nice thing about it is that this Rust AVT library allows me to create a pure textual version of any recording. Basically, I can get a final output from any recording as if you just looked at your terminal at the end of your session and used a scroll bar to scroll up and down to see what happened before. So I can convert any recording to like a pure textual version, and then I plan to feed that into some full text search engine and then implement the full text search on the website, so you could search by the recordings contents. That's another thing that using Rust here.
Is this library published?
Yeah, it's under Asciinema GitHub organization. It's called AVT. Well, it's on crates. In the past, I've used the Git URL in cargo dependencies, but I might have published it. I don't remember. But it's something, it's been mostly used internally by Asciinema project. So, and the thing is that it's not like a full-featured terminal emulator. It's just the parts that are needed for playback. So it doesn't handle any input and other things that typical terminal emulators do. So I'm not sure if this would be useful to like outside of this project, but if there's interest, I'm happy to polish the API and publish it to crates.
Yeah, imagine a full-fledged one would be a lot of work. So you need someone who is interested in the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, then you could ask, why haven't I used an existing Rust terminal emulator and embed it, right? There's Alacrity and there are some other things, but those things are quite big. Like they do probably 5 times more than I need. And just using those small selected pieces that I need, I looked at them, but it wasn't that easy to just, use it for my use case. So, and it's kind of my hobby implementing this stuff. I first implemented this thing in Clojure, then re-implementing in Rust was kind of straightforward. It hasn't been, something totally new to me, like the concept of implementing this stuff.
Cool. By the way, any of this work, is it like paid or you're doing all Asciinema work on your own time?
95% of that was just free hobby spare time work. Recently, I started offering consulting services for anyone who would like some customizations or installation or maintenance of a private Asciinema server instance, or like some custom feature in the web player. So I had several clients who use Asciinema and they paid for some of this work, and most of it was open source, so they didn't need it to be proprietary. They just wanted to be there. So it was kind of win-win for me, because at the same time, the features that those clients needed were already on my to-do list, but they were always somewhere at the bottom because it seemed like quite a lot of work. So someone paid for that, and this enabled a lot of nice features that I've released recently. I wish there was more paid work around this project, but so far it's mostly spare time, kind of hobby thing.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yes.
I know the feeling well.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same with my Zebus project. Yeah, I wanted to ask about like this rewrite. So this Rust rewrite. First of all, are you rewriting all the tools in Rust, and how do you feel like? What's the progress on that?
So I'm rewriting the CLI, the recorder, terminal recorder. So from Python to Rust. The web player stays as it is, JavaScript plus Rust. There's nothing to rewrite there. And the server-side part, also Elixir is fantastic language. I love it. And I believe that for things like web APIs, it's a great fit. And I don't intend to blindly use Rust everywhere. It makes no sense to me to just like put it everywhere because you just enjoy it.
Yeah.
So the implementation is purely about the CLI. And it's going well. I have most of the functionality working already. It's in the develop branch of the GitHub repo. So the old Python implementation is in the main branch, and the new one is in the develop branch. I think I'm at about 75% done. Like most of the commands like record, play, upload, and others are already, they work. But there's just several small things like options to those commands that may be missing. The config file, for example, you can configure the CLI with the config file. And in the previous versions, it used this like ini style config file, which Python has a standard library like support for. But I never really liked this format because it's kind of like unspecified and maybe not as ambiguous as YAML in some cases, but the new version will use TOML, which I also think is a better fit these days, better than for human written configs at least. So yeah, there's a few small things to finish and testing on various systems. Right now, I have it all working on Linux as this is my primary system I work on, but I have a MacBook laptop and the recording part doesn't work yet on macOS due to some system calls being not supported on macOS, and I need to use a different approach there, but that's solvable. So it's gonna be in a good shape soon. So maybe I will come back to the why the rewrite of the CLI. So first, I really enjoy working with Rust, and I enjoy it more than working with Python these days. And because this is my spare time hobby project, I want it to be fun and not, feel like doing something I don't enjoy. But that's not the biggest reason. There are some things that embedding the AVT library in the recorder will enable. So for example, Asciinema CLI had this command called cat, where you can specify a file name of a recording and it will just output all the text that was recorded in the session, but it includes all the control sequences which produce color, etc., etc. And this is, I would say, like useful to a degree, but people have been expecting that this will just produce a pure textual output, like a convert to text, the thing I talked about a moment ago. So AVT can do that. And if I embed this AVT in the CLI, I can just make the cat command to just produce the pure text output. People just want to create some like kind of like logs of their sessions, which would be just pure text files you can open with anything, right? So having the CLI in Rust allows me to easily embed Rust library like this one. Another thing is that there's this project under Asciinema family called AGG, Asciinema GIF generator, also written in Rust. This GIF generator is also an example of another rewrite I did, because it's like a next generation of the previous tool called AsciiCast to GIF. That was a combination of various CLI tools, ImageMagick and GIFsicle, and some, gluing many things together. And this GIF generator was kind of working, but it had so many problems, mostly about the memory usage, resource usage in general, but memory usage, CPU usage, and disk usage, that it was sometimes impossible to convert a session recording into a GIF file if you didn't have like 64 gigs of RAM or like something like that. It was just like prototype went production and people started using it, but it was kind of not really up to my standards. So I thought, okay, this is a thing that Rust will be a nice use case for. So I had the AVT terminal emulator in Rust, which is needed to build a representation of each frame of a recording. So I use clap library, I use AVT, and then a third component was the GIFSKI library, which is a pretty cool library for producing GIF files by feeding the library with individual frames. So this tool is now like it can produce GIF file from any recording super quickly in no time using minimum amount of memory. I am yet to see a recording which it cannot convert to GIF.
It's good that you mentioned this AGG tool, because that was my next question about it. Do you think any of the functionality got lost during this rewrite in Rust? Because as you know, I filed an issue recently. I tried to use it, and frankly, it didn't work for me at all, because I think currently it only supports these monochrome emojis. And I had a lot of emojis in my demo. That was the main point, actually. So for me, it was not working because of that. So I was just wondering if it was something because of the rewrite, or is it any functionality missing?
Other than emojis, which do work to an extent, but not as you would like them to work right now, nothing was lost, and it's much better. There are more options and more features there. It's still a small tool, but yeah, the emoji thing is that the ASCII cast to GIF used WebKit to create an image of every frame. So it rendered just a page with a frame, took a PNG snapshot, saved it to a file in a directory, and then did it with every frame like that. But because it was WebKit, it rendered emojis just like a web browser using your, full color emojis, and it looked like what you see on the web, right? So the rewrite doesn't use WebKit, and it uses Rust libraries for rasterizing fonts and sort of a few other things.
I also noticed that all the open issues on the project AGG are about fonts. So I think fonts is a big deal. I was just wondering, is it not possible to use system fonts? Just pick it from the system, the host?
Well, no, it uses system fonts by default, and you can just pass additional fonts directory. But the past issues that were mostly solved were because there were some system font related things there. I think the remaining ones are mostly about emojis. So the emoji thing is complicated, and so I need to find a Rust library which can render color emojis using the system emoji set. Probably there's something like that. If you know, then let me know.
But if you're using fonts from the system, right? So can't you use emojis from characters from there as well?
Yeah, but the emojis are not typically provided by system fonts. These are kind of separate things that get rendered by browsers and desktop programs. But at least to my knowledge, the Noto emoji font that I point people to in the README, it provides emoji set. But these are just monochrome as just like any font. Maybe emojis are in fonts.
Yeah. As far as I know, at least on Linux, they're part of the system font.
Okay. I think I now remember there's a library I use there. I think it's called Font2, if I remember correctly. And it just doesn't support non-monochrome fonts. Yeah, it doesn't support. And then I think last time I checked, one of its dependencies was the culprit. And so the library was waiting for the upstream to implement something. But the AG GIF generator, it has this concept of renderers, where to render individual frame before it's fed into the animation, the GIF generator, I mean the GIFSKI library, it can use any implementation of a renderer trait, like a trait I made there, that can produce a bitmap, like a buffer of pixels, right? And so right now this tool has two renderers. One is the default one is Font2, and the other is based on the library called ResVG, which uses SVG to produce a rasterized image of a frame. So I'm not sure if you tried, but maybe you can try passing the -- renderer ResVG, and maybe you will get colorful emojis.
Cool. But let's not turn it into my issue solving session. But that's good to hear. But also it's good to hear all those details. How you're implementing everything in the GIF generator.
For me, I'm really interested in how you maintain all these different languages and together. I mean, do you think that you chose the best technology for each piece, and that's kind of why you're not using the same language in every part? Because obviously, you could probably use Rust for nearly everything, no?
I think this, let's use my today's favorite language for everything. This phase I have, it's in the past for me. Probably I had something like that, maybe not with Rust, but earlier in my career. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for me to rewrite, for example, the server side, the Asciinema server in Rust. I think Rust is not the best tool for building like general purpose, like HTTP APIs. If you don't have like super hardcore performance requirements, like some proxies running inside cloud providers' infrastructures, I know, tooling that Cloudflare builds in Rust. If you're building like a JSON API or something, I think you would be more productive with, something higher level. So I really enjoy Elixir for that, since it's a higher level functional language with a fantastic web framework. The one I use is called Phoenix. So yeah, I think it would make little sense to do that. I could also rewrite, for example, a whole JavaScript player into Rust from the beginning to the end. There are some libraries for doing full like in-browser DOM manipulation and everything. I could compile the whole thing to WebAssembly, but also I don't think that would be very productive. I focused on using only the Rust for the most performance critical part, which is the interpretation of the stream and this whole emulation part. But the other things are just a shell around it. So the whole UI you see, the control bar, all the keyboard shortcuts that you can use there, it's all JavaScript. So I think it's just the best thing to use there. And yeah, also like I enjoy building command line interfaces with Rust, because one thing is clap. It's just like such an amazing library. You can do so much with it quickly, and it covers like 99% of what you need in a command line interface. So this is a nice thing. Rewriting GIF generator to Rust was just me trying to solve the performance problem, the resource problem, and it paid so well. It's just a pleasure to watch how Ag generates a GIF file in a matter of seconds. Yet another reason for me to rewrite the CLI in Rust is I'm thinking of integrating the GIF generator into the main CLI, so you wouldn't need to install additional tool, because the CLI knows how to work with the ASCII cast files, understands them, and I can embed the AVT already in the CLI in Rust, so I can have a GIF generation there just as another subcommand. For example, I know Asciinema convert demo.cast demo.gif. I'm not sure if this is something I would include in 3.0 in the initial rewritten version, but maybe 3.1. But this whole rewrite will enable lots of things. Like another thing, I have this under Asciinema organization on GitHub. There is a project called TST, short for Terminal Streamer. And it's another tool I've been building in Rust, which is basically like a live streaming solution. So you can share your live terminal session with people. But right now it's a standalone thing that you need to combine with the main CLI. But I think embedding the streaming part in the main CLI also makes sense, where you could just like type Asciinema stream and then you would get a link you can share with people. So you can ad hoc show someone how to do something in a CLI without like hosting it anywhere. You could just like do a quick ad hoc terminal sharing session thing.
I'm always kind of curious if it would even be interesting to use the real time kind of built in stuff with Elixir and doing like, say, you're teaching a course and it just so happens that most of the time you're using the terminal, you can use Vim, whatever, and you can kind of broadcast your terminal in real time across to your students. Have you ever thought about something like that?
Oh yeah, in fact, I already implemented initial version of it in the Elixir in the server, which is so this TST, the terminal streamer thing, it connects to the endpoint on the server over WebSockets, and then it streams it in real time. So you can share a link to a live session to someone exactly. So it has like a viewer counter, like who's watching right now, etc., etc. It's not a publicly available feature. This terminal streamer is kind of like not officially released yet. Maybe I'll just integrate it in the CLI and then document how to use it and enable it. But the server side, the Elixir code base already has support for it, allows any number of consumers / viewers to watch a stream in real time through the site. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious in what other kinds of places you could take this. I know in Changelog they was it the one guy was watching the Star Wars episode over Telnet, that kind of ASCII video, and he wanted to have the sound with it, which I mean, obviously, if you don't hear pew pew while you're watching Star Wars, then you're not really watching Star Wars, in my opinion. But yeah, I can imagine there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of places you could take this, right? But you have to kind of stay where you're going, right?
Yeah.
What's kind of the next big thing, right? Because you're always adding features, right? But what would be the next milestone that's coming up that we should be looking forward to?
So this Raspberry Write, I think, is one, at least a milestone for me, because it will enable a lot of cool things for the recorder and in general in the CLI. One thing I've been trying to get to over the years was this full text search on the site, on the Asciinema server, because it's just so easy right now to implement that. Once I can correctly convert every recording to a text, like a log view, I can feed those into Elasticsearch or something like that, and then have a nice full text search. I think this is the part that's been missing, and there's been always something else I've been working, but I think from user's point of view, that would be a valuable addition. Yeah, and this whole area of live streaming, this is very interesting to me at least. I'm not sure if this is where this will take the project and what shape this will take, but I have those kind of working pieces on the client side and on the server side. So I just need to make it so it's easy to use and fun to use. So, I imagine that it could be some kind of like a nerd version of Twitch, where like people just stream their Vim in real time. But then there's always, the what about sound? What about the commentary, live commentary? Like, and then this like adding the pure text silent live streaming will be okay. But I know that people immediately ask like, how can I add audio to it, like live commentary? And this could be a interesting thing to implement, but at the same time, like it would make the project go closer towards some regular OBS stuff, where you just stream microphone and screen and whatever. I don't have intention of competing on the market. I kind of enjoy this niche of lightweight terminal recordings. So I've been always trying to find the balance between fun, useful, and trying to keep it in a way so it doesn't feel like work. I've been doing this for over a decade because it's been fun and there was no stakeholders and there was no time pressure. I could do what I want and then have fun with it. Some features I naturally fear because I know that they can potentially make me miserable. But once I start implementing or releasing them, there will be like no way back. And then there will be just like constant stream of feature requests, issues, etc. So I'm kind of careful of what I introduce. I only add a feature when I'm really sure I want to maintain it for next, 10 years.
Yeah, but I think that's where you also kind of had to say, listen, we're going to be streaming, your terminal, and that's it. If you have audio problems, go somewhere else, basically. I mean, because if you think about it, like people need to understand that the benefit of this one is that you can like copy and paste stuff, because that's a really difficult problem. Like I've been in
Exactly.
so many of these sessions where we're trying to train new people to be developers, and so many times, the text is too small, they cannot read it, or they type it wrong because so many people fat finger phones and keyboards. If I could just copy and paste, or if they could do that, that would be the king. And, if I had this idea and that was, I felt very strongly, I would say, this is where we're going to end up at. If you need the audio, figure it out yourself. Or maybe you can work with, what do you call it?
Yeah,
WebRTC. I'm not sure how difficult that would be to add in. That wouldn't be much bandwidth on your side. I think you just need to do like the signaling, right? Or something like that.
true.
And there's a lot of tutorials how to do that with Phoenix channels. So, because I've played around myself.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I agree. I think I would do exactly what you say. Like, let's say you're on a call with someone, you're training people, and you want to show them something. And say you use Google Meet for like screen sharing and audio, but would you still use something like Asciinema streaming thing together with it if you already been sharing your video?
It depends. The problem with ASCII Cinema is that you have to stay within the terminal. But most people, they go to VS Code and whatever else, right? That's the tricky bit.
True, yeah.
But if I was only using that and it was a live thing, because so many times I have to say, okay, press this key, do that, and you're just shouting, no, 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 not that. You forgot that. But at this, I think something
Mhm.
like that, and it was on terminal, I would consider it because it would solve my issues, because that's the one thing video doesn't solve. Sharing a screen doesn't solve getting the right commands across, other than copying and pasting to them.
That is true. Going like across all the applications is a tricky problem. If you want to preserve the content of each application in its original format.
If I was you, I wouldn't venture into that. Just stick in your space. I'm not trying to crowd your thing, but be the master of one thing. You're already doing great at this one.
Exactly. That's what I've been doing. And I don't plan to change that because, yeah, in VS Code, if you want to share your VS Code has its own native built-in, sharing, live share thing. You can do it, right? If you want to share multiple applications, you just use, screen sharing of Google Meet or another tool like that. Of course, you can copy paste, but well, if someone was paying like a lot of money, I could try to solve this problem, going outside of terminal and sharing things. But I'm not sure if it's even remotely possible to do it so it works across at least, Mac OS and Linux. And people would, of course, want that for Windows. And all those systems have different APIs for dealing with Windows. I think let's just stay with the lowest common denominator, which is just pixels, and share the whole desktop. Oh, so yeah, master of the niche. That's probably something that I will pursue.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, I really appreciate you coming on and giving the story about, this and talking about the different stuff. And I always like to hear, obviously I wouldn't be doing this Rustacean Station if I didn't like Rust, but it's good to hear like when Rust doesn't quite fit, right? Yeah, okay. I totally agree with you. Like, especially since we don't have a particular framework that everybody's kind of sticking with, as opposed to like in Elixir, you have Phoenix, and then sure, there's other things, but not really, as opposed to Rust, where you have so many choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to add to what you just said, like I recently learned that UI development, like the actual UI declaration and the components and stuff, that is also not something that is very good in Rust, because the development cycle is just way too slow for that, because you need like immediate response and see how your UI looks like when you changing anything. I have the mascot as my tattoo, as you can see in the video here, at least. Yeah, I have to admit that there are some certain things where Rust is just not appropriate, at least right now. So we have to be mindful of that.
If I remember correctly, I think Slint you can do like on the fly rebuilding, right? So there's one that's doing that.
Yeah, all the good UI toolkits, like it's the same with C ones, right? Like C and C++ ones, both Qt and GTK, they both allow you to do the actual UI development in a separate language that just gets loaded and reloaded. And that's much, much nicer and much better way of developing the actual UI. But of course, the control you can, most of the actual application you can still keep in Rust, and it's good for that, but not actual UI part.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that that was actually quite common to do. But yeah, coming back, Marcin, it was great to have you on. I'm glad we got to talk because, yeah, I do remember seeing your stuff, and I'm happy that now I actually understand more about what it is. Because I was looking into it and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Oh, yeah, you can actually copy and paste and you can select text. I never tried it before because I never thought about it. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, I think over the years, one thing that was missing to give users like a good picture of what's possible was a proper documentation, because it was all scattered across multiple repos and not very well laid out. So recently I've, at the end of the year, created the new docs site where I combined all of it and tried to add some getting started guides, like the overall one and individual ones for each component, so you can see like what you can do with it. So hopefully people will know what's out there.
Great. Well, I'll have to take a look at the doc site because I am kind of curious what else is in there because I'm sure there's a lot of features. I remember listening to the podcast from Changelog and you mentioned a lot of things, so I'll have to go back and play around and probably actually try to make some stuff with it too. Yeah, again, thanks for coming on. Zishan, you have any last words?
I just wanted to say that like, I first learned of ASCII Cinema at the same time as I was learning Rust. And so it was like sort of like connected for me, even though they had nothing to do with each other. At that time, it was 2017. But I'm super glad to hear that now Rust has a lot to do with ASCII Cinema. Yeah, and I was really happy to have you as well, like on this podcast and interview you and get to know everything about your development and cool stuff that you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was super interesting to be here. And I've been a huge fan of the podcast for years now. So I'm super happy that you guys invited me. Thanks.